There is a dog somewhere near you right now, maybe asleep, maybe watching you from across the room. And that dog's nose is running a chemistry analysis that would make a laboratory envious, not a figure of speech. Literally. I don't think most of us really understand what a dog's sense of smell actually is. We know it's extraordinary. We've seen the headlines, the dog that kept nosing the same spot on its owner's forearm for weeks. And then the doctor found something. I believed every one of those stories for a long time. They lodged in my head and stayed there. But last spring, 3 evenings in a row, Sesame eventually losing her mind about something at the back window. Noodle on his rug, I actually went and read the studies behind those headlines, the methodology, the sample sizes, the real accuracy numbers. And what I found was stranger and more honest than any of them had prepared me for. Here's what we're doing today. We're going through the biggest claims around dogs and illness detection, cancer, diabetes, seizures, and sorting them carefully. What's a myth? What's research stage? What's actually proven? And I want to start with the question that shows up in the comments every single time this topic comes up, and almost never gets a real answer. Is your dog actually trying to tell you something when she won't stop sniffing one spot? Or is she just being a dog? I'm Sam. I'm not a vet, I'll say that more than once, and I've been reading everything I can find on this for about a year now. If you're new here, subscribe before you go. Stay until the end. The wonder lands a lot harder when it's earned. Here is the thing I want to be honest about first, because it's the one that actually keeps people up at night. Your dog keeps coming back to the same spot, same place, over and over. She won't leave it alone. It feels different, not casual, focused, persistent. And you're lying there at 2 in the morning thinking, is she trying to tell me something? Here's what I want you to hold on to, because it matters. There is a real difference between your own dog noticing a change in you and a trained detection dog screening a stranger's sample blind in a controlled laboratory study. These are not the same claim, not even close to the same level of scientific complexity. Your dog has spent every day of her life with you. She knows your scent the way you know your own kitchen, every baseline, every layer, every normal variation from 100 ordinary mornings. So when something in your body chemistry shifts, she will notice. That is not supernatural. That is a nose with roughly 300 million olfactory receptor cells, the specialized detectors in the nasal passages, compared to your 6 million, doing exactly what it was built to do. But noticing is not diagnosing. This is not her being dramatic. This is not random. This is not a medical result. A behavioral change that's genuinely new, persistent, specific, focused on one place, sustained over days or weeks, unlike anything she's done before, is a reason to pay attention. Not to panic, to pay attention. If that's what you're seeing and you have anything else you'd bring up at a checkup, bring this too. Mention it to your doctor, not as a diagnosis, as something you noticed. Let the professionals do the rest. What it isn't. A sniff when you walk through the door, a brief curious moment, the ordinary scent inventory a dog runs on you every time you come home from somewhere new. I spent a while reading significance into every one of those. I was wrong. Most of them are just a dog being a dog. When I brought this up with Dr. Hale, Noodle's vet, and honestly the first person I call when I've been reading myself into a corner at midnight, her answer stopped me. She said, your dog loves you and he notices things about you. That's real. But he doesn't know what a tumor is any more than he knows what a mortgage is. The kindest accurate thing anyone had ever said to me about this subject. And if anything about your dog's own behavior has you genuinely worried, if she seems off in ways beyond curiosity, that conversation belongs with your vet, not a YouTube video. Now, here's where the wonder comes back in. And it comes back hard. It is not a sixth sense. It is not supernatural. It is not magic. But what it is may actually be more interesting. Every cell in your body has a chemistry. When cells go wrong, when they divide the way cancer cells do, or when blood sugar crashes into a hypoglycemic episode, that abnormal chemistry produces byproducts. Tiny chemical signals that drift into the air, leave traces in exhaled breath, show up in urine. Scientists call them volatile organic compounds, VOCs for short. Think of them as the smell of what your cells are doing. Healthy tissue has a VOC profile. Diseased tissue has a different one. Tumors produce a chemical signature that differs from the tissue around them. The difference is vanishingly small. We're talking parts per trillion, roughly the equivalent of detecting a single drop of something dissolved in 20 Olympic swimming pools. Lab instruments can find VOCEs, gas chromatography, and mass spectrometry, the gold standard analytical methods, identify individual chemical compounds in a sample. Stay with me here because this is where it gets genuinely strange. A dog's nose doesn't process one compound at a time. It takes in the entire profile, the complete chemical landscape, and the olfactory region of a dog's brain, proportionally around 40 times larger than the equivalent area in ours. Pattern matches it against everything that nose has ever encountered. The dog isn't doing something unusual. This isn't a superpower layered on top of a normal nose. This is just what a dog's nose is. Noodle can tell which corner of my backyard the neighbor's cat visited 3 days ago. Of course, something registers when the chemistry changes. Here's the part I want to be careful with, because I know what these numbers do to people who are already scared, and I think we owe each other more than a figure without its context. You've seen the studies cited. Dogs detecting cancer with accuracy numbers above 90%, sometimes cited as high as 97. Those numbers are real. They come from real research, and I want to be specific about what that research actually found. A 2006 paper in the journal Integrative Cancer Therapies, McCulloch and colleagues, trained dogs to detect lung and breast cancer from breath samples collected in controlled conditions. Their reported sensitivity, how often the dog correctly caught a positive, was above 88%. Specificity, how often it correctly cleared a negative, was above 97% in those settings. In a 2004 study in the British Medical Journal, Willis and colleagues showed that dogs trained on urine samples from bladder cancer patients identified the right samples far more often than chance. Tim zo chum qua duantnai around 41% of the time, compared to the 14% you'd expect from a random guess. Those results are incredibly exciting. Here is what they are not: a clinical diagnostic tool ready for your doctor's office. In a controlled study, you know which samples are cancerous. You have a small group of well-trained dogs, optimized for one specific task in one specific setting. Real clinical screening looks nothing like that. It means enormous numbers of samples from people with unknown disease rates, dogs who vary in health and focus from one day to the next, and the unforgiving math of false positives at scale. A test that performs beautifully in a research lab can generate tens of thousands of wrong alarms when applied broadly to a healthy population. Every false alarm is a person frightened, a person who gets tested further, a person who may be harmed by that additional testing for a result that wasn't real. The researchers doing this work, and they are serious researchers at serious institutions, are the first to say it. We are not there yet. Anyone who tells you this is definitely ready for the clinic or definitively never will be is ahead of the data. I used to read those accuracy numbers and think they meant something was being kept from us. I went there. That is not what the evidence shows. Which brings me to a comment I see sometimes, and I want to address it with the same care I'd want extended to me, because I've asked the same question myself. If dogs can do this, and the evidence says they can in controlled conditions, why isn't it in clinics, and is someone blocking it? I understand that instinct. Being skeptical of large institutions is not unreasonable, and I'm not here to talk anyone out of skepticism wholesale. But here is what the research literature shows when you actually read it. The barriers are practical, not conspiratorial. Every dog is a different instrument, and repeating those results consistently, the cornerstone of clinical medicine, is genuinely hard. Not just because a dog has its own moods on any given afternoon, but because dogs are master readers of us. In some early studies, dogs weren't just smelling the samples, they were reading the scientist's body language to see which sample got them a treat. They want to please us. That makes double-blind clinical trials incredibly complicated. Throughput is a real problem. Cancer screening at population scale means processing enormous numbers of samples over time. One dog, even a very good one, cannot operate at that volume, and the false positive math at scale actively harms people. Regulators who demand rigorous evidence before approving a diagnostic test are not wrong to do so. Nobody suppressed this. It is a hard problem. The people trying to solve it know exactly how hard it is. And they are still trying. At the start of this video, I said the truth was stranger and more honest than any headline had prepared me for. Here's what I meant, because there are things in this area that are proven, and there is a biological reason why. Finding a localized tumor is like looking for a chemical needle in a haystack, but a blood sugar crash or an epileptic seizure, that is a massive system-wide alarm. That's why trained medical alert dogs for type 1 diabetes are not experimental. As blood sugar drops into dangerous territory, the entire body pumps out a compound called isoprene in exhaled breath. The dog isn't hunting for a whisper. They're smelling a siren. Research on breath chemistry and hypoglycemia has documented this connection. Dogs can detect the change before the person feels it. There are peer-reviewed studies behind this. There are real people whose dogs woke them during nighttime hypoglycemic episodes they might not otherwise have survived. A 2019 study in Scientific Reports demonstrated that epileptic seizures produce a consistent, detectable odor, and that trained dogs could reliably identify it from sweat samples in controlled trials. Not metaphor, chemistry. Multiple trials across Europe, published in peer-reviewed journals through 2020 and 2021, showed that dogs could detect COVID-19 from sweat samples with sensitivity above 90% in some studies. Documented. Replicated and cancer? The science is young, the signal is real. Studies are underway on ovarian, prostate, and colorectal cancer, among others. We don't know where this ends up, but here is what stays with me. It isn't the lab data or the clinical trials, or the exact percentage of a false positive. It's the mechanism itself. The exact same biological machinery that a research dog uses to find a microscopic chemical signature in a sterile lab is sitting in your living room right now, tracking exactly where the neighbor's cat walked 3 days ago. Not magic, not myth, just an absolute marvel of evolution. The nose is one of the most astonishing instruments in the living world, and it is asleep on your couch. We started today with a question I think a lot of us have asked quietly, maybe at 2 in the morning, staring at the ceiling. Here's where I want to leave you. A new, persistent, fixated attention to one spot, sustained over time, completely unlike your dog, paired with anything else you'd bring up at a checkup, is worth a conversation with your doctor. Not as a result, as something you noticed. Let them do the rest. And if anything about your dog's own health has you worried, that is a conversation for your vet, not a YouTube video. A dog is not a diagnostic instrument, but a dog that loves you, with a nose like that, notices the world in a way that's worth taking seriously. Has your dog ever fixated on something in a way you couldn't explain, and were you right to pay attention? Tell me what happened in the comments. I'd really like to know. I read everyone. Go say hi to your dog right now, and I'll see you in the next one.